We the people of the state of Jefferson, ever mindful of the rights we hold most dear, life, liberty, and property, are compelled to establish this, our new state, for the preservation of these natural inalienable rights. Our mandate for the protection of life, liberty, and property gives urgent voice to our demand for representation that reflects our needs, our history, our culture, and our moral impervitude. Time has come for 51. This is Terry Rapoza.
And Win Carpenter. You're listening to Jefferson State of Mind podcast.
Well, good morning, everybody. Hope you're all doing well out there in Radio Land and in podcast land and in all the lands that we visit. And we just hope everybody's doing okay. I'm here with Win Carpenter. My name's Terry Rapoza. This is Jefferson State of Mind, M-I-N-E, which means it's ours. We're here with Katie and Arthur Gorman, a young couple here in Shasta County that have been instrumental in standing up against the mandates of a corrupt government. Anyway, Katie, tell us a little bit about yourself. Well,
I'm Katie Gorman, and I'm a kindergarten teacher for the Gateway School District. And my husband and I have just been fighting for the healthcare workers and the teachers on these mandates.
And I'm Arthur Gorman. I'm an RN here in town at one of our hospitals, helping everybody out, holding the line through this pandemic and treating everybody just the way they should be. We're just getting back on track. The pandemic hopefully is coming to an end. We have therapeutics that are working. We got a vaccine, and hopefully we can all get back to our normal way of life soon.
Now, on Friday, we met, Katie, you and I, with our sheriff, and the idea was to find out if the sheriff had jurisdiction to stand between what's happening with these mandates and what's happening with the illegal process in which the agencies in California are going after our schools, going after our children, and going after our medical profession. So, Katie, shed a little light on that, on what we talked about on Friday.
Well, one of the main things that I really wanted to talk to him about was just some of the things that are happening with our children that I think not only are not okay, but I think people should be outraged over. One aspect that I brought up was the masks. And we have kids. It's been mostly this school year. I've seen rashes on their faces, sores behind their ears from the mask rubbing the back of their ears. And I've been trying to educate people, even parents, on, that it is caused from the mask. I didn't know what it was, and the nurse told me that we're having a problem with what's called impetigo. And that's when I have to have Arthur tell you about it, because he is the one that educated me about it.
Right. So impetigo is kind of like a contact dermatitis built up from moisture on your face and not being clean. So if you're not washing your face, you're not washing your hands, you have increased moisture on your face, you can have a variety of skin conditions that happen, but impetigo is one of them. And in September, a lot of emergency room physicians came on the news, and even was reported to the FDA and the CDC that there is an increase in impetigo since the pandemic started. Well, the problem is that most children wear a cloth mask. In 2015, they did multiple studies, and this was before COVID, and they were just seeing what is better, a cloth mask or a surgical mask, and they've never done a double-blind study, randomized, controlled for children. They've only done it in healthcare workers, but when they did this study, they concluded at the end that most people don't wear the mask properly. If it's a cloth mask, what happens is you build up moisture on the inside. Once the moisture builds up, more contamination can happen. It's no longer effective, and its protection goes down, but it also, your increase of illness goes up.
Wow.
So this is in adult healthcare workers, and for children, let's just go into that. So children don't wear them properly. If they do wear them, they switch mask back and forth.
Oh, man.
And that's when you get this contact dermatitis or impetigo going on, and it's a contact disease. So I'm going to share, I'm a kindergarten kid, I'm going to share my Superman mask with my friend that has a Spider-Man mask, and we both have impetigo. Now we're both giving it to each other. Our rate of infection for COVID is really low, but now our increase of infection rate on skin disease is high. So, what are we doing here?
The thing I want to kind of interject here is just kind of to let you know, this isn't just a skin rash. So what ends up happening is, now this has happened just this school year with 4 of my students, but it goes up into their nose. Their nose turns bright pink, and it gets cracks in it, and they're bleeding from these cracks because they're trying to touch it all the time, and it's like he said, it's spreading, and then I have kids that are crying about having to wear the mask because they have the sores from the elastic bands rubbing over time on the back of their ears. And for me, and this is just anecdotal, ear protrusion is also a concern of mine when they're wearing those masks all day long. It's just something that I've noticed too. And, I just want all the mama bears out there, maybe because they pick up their babies and, they take their masks off and they don't see it all day, but I see it all day long, and I'm watching this kind of evolve over time, and it's a problem. It's hard to teach reading. It's hard to teach, just facial expressions and those kinds of things. And so I think the masks are something that, we just need to say no more. We just need to, one of the main things that I find is that piecemeal non-compliance, and most of us don't want to get our kids involved in that kind of thing. But I think now is the time, because we have to be fighting these things, and we can't be culpable in our children's health problems.
What did the school nurse or people there that you brought this issue to, what did they say about it? Did anybody react to this? That's awful.
Yeah, so it was actually the school nurse who had alerted that to me when I finally just had take it upon myself to walk my own student up to the office and say, what's going on here? I'm seeing this, could it be the mask? And she told me what it was, and was kind of like, well, I don't know, maybe it's the mask, but kind of like, yeah, it probably is. So that's when I, had to go to Arthur and ask him about it.
What about the long-term conditions when you're talking about impetigo? What can happen there? And then you're talking about the nasal cavity where it's bright pink. What are the detrimental things that can happen to a child and their development with those things happening?
Yeah, I believe they had to go to a doctor and actually get treatment to get that. But I'll let Arthur talk about that.
Yeah, so they can use an antibiotic treatment for impetigo. It's...
Would that be oral or?
They could do an oral antibiotic, yes. Sometimes they do like a cream, but most of the time it's an oral antibiotic. And the problem is with anybody, if you not only do you have this infection, it can turn into a secondary infection. You could end up having a staph infection. So if you don't treat it, it can get worse. So we'd like to treat these things before they get worse. But now we have a mask in front of it. So if the kid's wearing a mask properly, if that's going on, no one knows he has it except mom and dad when he gets home. If he's not wearing his mask, of course, then the teacher obviously sees this and then goes to the school nurse, and that escalates the plan of care, and hopefully that child gets the treatment that he needs. But then you also have the other effect. This does affect younger children, because as they get older, they usually are a little bit more health conscious of what they look like and what they have on their face. But for younger kids, they don't really care.
Well, that partners up with when you're talking about the ears, the cartilage in the ear. Mm-hmm. So if you're putting a string around the ear, you're pulling it out. So now we're going to have all these children with their ears sticking out. Is that what's going to be happening? Truly, it's cartilage.
Yeah.
It's cartilage that can
probable.
happen.
Yeah.
That's what I was bringing up. I said, just a anecdotal thing, but it's something that I've noticed, and it's noticeable.
Especially if somebody already has that propensity to have their ears sticking out, then you put a string on that. With the force of it, it's going to accentuate it. Yeah. So now it's really going to happen. So then down the road, for cosmetic reasons, they're probably going to have surgery to fix that.
Right. So they're going to have a lot of psychosocial components.
All this can be prevented.
Yes, it
Oh,
could be prevented.
Oh my gosh.
That's a good point. You're talking about psychological components to this.
Correct.
And Katie had brought up to the sheriff about even the fact when they're wearing the mask that a lot of when they speak, when they learn how to speak properly, that you can't see the mouth when you're watching somebody. You don't have that because the mask is on, so it doesn't really help as far as teaching them to verbalize.
Yeah, so their affective filter is a lot, it's very different. You used to see kids being so animated and when they talk, and when you smile at a child, they would smile right back at you. Or, you give them that stern look, and that's like the escalation of, when you're telling a child that they're not supposed to do something, you don't want to call them out, across the room. And sometimes that can be more disruptive. So a lot of times us as teachers or moms, we use the look,
Right, yep.
Well, the look is not, it doesn't do anything anymore. Here I have this mask on and I'm trying to really use my eyes, and give them that teacher look. But it, that process just doesn't work with them. They don't have that level of intelligence with the facial expressions. And for me, like I said, it's anecdotal, but it's so noticeable. And it's something that we as teachers have talked about.
Well, and that's all learned. That's learned behavior in the classroom, knowing what's acceptable and not acceptable, and learning how to deal with it as a child. And here, that's what you're there to do, is help teach them that. And if they're not getting it, then they're just floating through.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
knowledge.
in San Diego, there's a group of parents and educators that got together. They call themselves Let Them Breathe. And they put together a lawsuit, and it was dismissed, but there was some really great things that came out of it. The judge's opinion, first let me back up. How Newsom's representatives argued his side of the case was very telling. So, excuse me. So they argued that it was not Newsom himself implementing this mask mandate and forcing students to go into independent study for not wearing their mask, or sometimes they have to go to continuation school because they get so much trouble for not wearing it. So they basically said that the defendant, Newsom, was not the person who is implementing the punitive things having to do with the mask mandate. So then it also proceeds to say that they're not mandatory and that the districts are free to choose or not to choose to do these mask mandates. Now we still have to deal with, other things, because by the time this came out, the OSHA example hadn't come through. So in the process, there was that other court case in the Fifth Circuit that said that OSHA cannot implement its emergency rule having to do with the vaccines of with employees of mandated vaccines for companies with employees of 100 or more. So that was stopped. So people are kind of wondering if that also has to do with because it's under that same emergency auspice with the masks as well for the students. So districts are still worried, whether they're going to be in trouble for dropping the masks, because there might be that OSHA part coming in. And then they're also worried because their insurance companies may say, we're going to drop you or something like that. So
are they worried more about the money than anything else?
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that they're being told that they can be sued liable personally. So there's a lot of coercion involved in this, but we're slowly able to break down these doors. But for me, where I'm at is educating parents about what's going on, getting them that sense of urgency to just fight this, just to the nth degree. Whether, some things we've thought about is, serving the districts, saying, my child will not wear a mask. If you put one on my child, that is child abuse, something like that.
Right.
Is there a way that we can get jurisdiction? I know we talked to the sheriff about this on Friday, and the look I got from him, and I think maybe you had noticed that also, that it was kind of like, these people are almost practicing medicine without a license. For one thing, the other thing is, I know if it was my 5-year-old would have been one of my kids, I would have been down there getting them arrested for a situation where how can they force my child to wear a mask
Right.
that is causing physical harm? And you two have just stated the medical and the unlawful side of this whole thing. Why couldn't the sheriff have the jurisdiction to say, wait a second, you can't do this because it causes this, this, and this, and stand between the schools and the parents for the parents? Does that make any sense?
Well, they're not even following their own rules, because when schools were opened, under third grade, the public health order from the California government said that under third grade didn't have to wear a mask.
So this affects all counties in California, and that's why, folks, this program is so important. What Arthur and Katie have to offer here is something that affects every single county in the state of California. And before we continue, I do want to encourage people to share this program, share it on Facebook, share it wherever you can. Share this program and get the word out, because these two have really hit on something.
Yeah, so we're really seeing that with this court case and this opinion, there's a really good in for us to fight these masks. If we push this, and if we stop wearing masks and we refuse to wear them for our students, there's a possibility that districts know that they could be drug into court like Newsom did, and they would be the ones implementing having these kids not have an equal education. And equal education is important for these kids. I work with a underserved population of kids who have been losing out on school right and left constantly due to contact tracing. And, they're being forced to wear these masks. They're getting health problems because of it. I feel like at least their emotional intelligence is, not where it should be. So we need to educate these school districts, get these parents in there, let them know we're done with the masks. We're done with it. They won't mask our children anymore. And we had Judy Flores, our county superintendent, sent a letter to the Board of Supervisors and told them that they had quarantined something like 22,000 students this school year alone. And that was broken up.
How many?
22,000.
Oh, my gosh.
So, and I'm not sure if some of those were just 22,000 quarantined. Some of them might have been students, the same student over again, because I have seen that. So anyway, I just want people to see that these mandates, not just the vaccine mandate, which is really, obviously our line in the sand. That's where we just pull our kids out. But we need to be fighting all of them. They're all bad for our students, and the quarantine measures. If we go on that route that this court case did, which was, our child needs an equal education. They're not sick. It's not spreading in schools.
Yeah, discrimination.
Yeah, they're being put on quarantine, and this is only our unvaccinated students,
Right.
by the way. The vaccinated students who are exposed to COVID are allowed to stay on campus, and our unvaccinated students are the ones that are being sent home for 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
You had mentioned the peaceful remedy to this, which is keeping your kids out of school. And you all have you've had a couple of different rallies, several different rallies in our county. And at one point, when we kept the kids out of school on a particular Monday, wasn't it like 40% of the students in Shasta County? You remember that figure?
Yeah, 46%. It was 46% of school-age children did not attend school that day in Shasta County.
Well, the Board of Supervisors was saying that Joe Comenti especially was saying that, we have 180,000 people in this county, and you're only talking about, some of the school kids, and so most of the people in the county really didn't see a problem with it. Now, to me, that's amazing when you stop and think about, you've got 46% of the kids that are staying home. What about their parents? Are they staying home because of that? What about the grandparents who may be watching the kids? So you have a huge amount of people that are saying, I mean, it could be well over 50% of the voters in the county that could be saying, hey, you know, we're not going to allow our grandkids, our kids to go to the school with these just draconian rules.
Right.
Absolutely.
You know, it gets even, you know, worse because when we're talking about masks, we're talking about communication. I know in the healthcare setting, a lot of our patients with the mask, they have a mask on, I have a mask on, we're talking to each other, we can't see each other, we're not communicating effectively with each other, we're not hearing each other because of the mask.
Yeah.
So then you're taking your mask down so that your patient can see your lips and they can see what your facial expressions, and you're trying to educate them about their healthcare conditions, and things are just getting missed, and you're going over and over and to make sure it doesn't. But I think Katie could talk about how many kids, at least in her classroom or her school, have had an increase in need of a speech therapist to come in to help out with education because they're just missing things in communication.
Right.
Yeah, I have seen over the last couple of years a remarkable increase in students who need speech therapy, and it seems to be, you know, right in line with the pandemic. So like the kids I have now, my 4-year-olds, you know, you think about how long we've been into this pandemic,
Half their life.
and how much of their life has been spent,
Yeah.
you know, with
Wow.
this. And they're so different. And I have to say that there's a lot of sounds like sounds that we make, you know, in the front of our mouth, and it makes a little bit of a different sound than if we use the back of our mouth. Well, and that's the one aspect that I will say is very, very obvious in these kids, is that they don't know, because they're not watching your mouth, they don't know whether to make that sound in the front of your mouth or in the back of your mouth. And so a lot of them are getting support for that. And our speech therapist and her team are just overwhelmed right now.
And that's just in your school.
Yeah.
Right.
So how many schools do we have that are experiencing the
Oh,
same thing?
man.
Statewide.
Statewide, yeah,
We
exactly.
talked about, you know, psychological harm, and now we're talking about an actual physical harm happening to our children that people can't see. And since they can't see it, it's a non-issue. But the parents can see it with the speech development.
See it and hear it.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
teachers. So there's a lot of harm happening to the children just because of the mandates.
Well, think about when you're communicating with somebody who is older and their hearing is fading, right? They're wearing a muzzle. That's what they are. They're wearing a muzzle. You're wearing a muzzle. They can't hear you. They can't understand you. The frustration level for them and the frustration level for you, probably most likely where you are at the hospital,
Correct.
dealing with those kind of people, you know, that, or just hard of hearing in general.
Right.
How does that work? It doesn't.
No, it doesn't work.
I mean, you can't hear the articulation. You can't hear the emphasis on syllables. You know, you just can't hear the sound because it's all so muffled.
Right. And as you can imagine, if you end up in a hospital and you have a new diagnosis and this is
Right.
all brand new and the medicines are brand new and the care for you is going to be brand new, and you're having someone explain a very complex topic
Right.
of treatment to you, you're probably not going to leave, even if you heard it, understood it, had a handout, watched a video.
Right.
There's still going to be a lot of knowledge deficit
Right.
there. And now we've hindered you by putting this mask in the way, and you're not getting the things that you need just because we're all wearing masks and not communicating effectively.
And that affects recovery, if at all.
Right.
You know, I mean, if somebody's going to recover, great. If they're not, because of all this stuff that's happening.
Right. Are they coming back to the hospital because they didn't take their medicine the way they should, because they didn't understand what you were saying, because the
Right.
mask was a hindrance
Wow.
to the
Right.
education of that patient?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so I really want parents to know about my group of teachers. So we have linked arms. They're not just teachers, I should say educators. You know, just people that work at schools. We've linked arms. We've stood strong together, 17 of us, and 2 people. So it's really 19 of us, but refused the testing in our district. And we never once went in, didn't get tested, because we felt like it was the next thing that was going to happen was they were going to do that to our students.
And that's at your school district? Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife works at a different school district, and she has not been tested. She won't be tested.
That's amazing. Mm-hmm. Good for her. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That, to me, the main reason that we kept saying how important this was as soon as we were like outed as unvaccinated, we had other staff going around saying, oh, well, you wouldn't be quarantined if you were just vaccinated.
Right.
And, they were like being mean to us.
Absolutely.
I had somebody come in who was my friend and tell me that she hated me and hated what I was doing, and I was no longer her friend. And so we were feeling all of this stuff. And then when the testing came up, we were like, we can't do it because we know what's next is randomized testing of our unvaccinated students.
That's right.
And so we linked arms. We said, this is discriminatory. We gave them all the science showing vaccinated, unvaccinated, spread it, have the same viral load, get it and spread it the same. And we just kept on, we stood strong. And this is all the way from October 18th until last Wednesday night. They decided to test all staff with non-evasive testing, which is the other thing that we were fighting for.
Would that be a saliva test?
Yes. Yeah, with the saliva tests, and so they're going forward with foot in the bill for everyone to be tested, and it's the same requirements for everyone across the board. So they're going to really think twice by folding that down to students, which was their next plan. And some districts are already kind of feeling that out and starting that here in Shasta County, by the way, doing some randomized testing on kids. Of course, unvaccinated only.
So did they get permission from the parents to do the randomized testing?
Yeah, so what they did was on the sign-up sheets, just to sign your kid up in school, in a lot of the districts, they put that as, one of the line items that the parents would sign. Some districts, waited till later and then made that a permission later on.
And that was effective as of the new school year? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, for some school districts. And then other ones, they had the parents, they sent out a link and the parents signed up on a portal or something like that. So, yeah, so they were, they have permission now, basically, to just go in and test these kids. And and the main reason, too, is, maybe if you're sick, you really want to know if you have it so you know how to treat your illness. So you don't mind being exposed to those agents on the end of that thing, which is called ethylene oxide, because it's a known cancer-causing agent.
Now, is this on the swab that goes up your nose?
Yeah, for the PCR test, yeah.
And it's also an antifreeze. What does that tell you?
Yeah, that's
Keep your engine
crazy.
running.
I didn't know that. Yeah, so if you're being exposed or your child's being exposed to this stuff over time, that could be a huge problem. And you would not believe the waiver that you have to sign stating that you will not hold liable. And the list is just 2 miles long saying who you will not hold liable if something bad happens to you due to these tests.
Okay, so let me get this straight. You have a test that you're forced to have, and you need to have this test if you want to keep your position, right?
Correct.
Okay. And you're being forced to have it, and when you have this test, it could be detrimental to your health. But if you don't do it, and then if it is detrimental to your health, then there's no liability on the other end?
Correct.
That's insanity. This whole thing is so insane, and that's why, folks, you need to share this program. It's so important because you guys are bringing to light things that I know our sheriff didn't know. I'll bet you there isn't a sheriff in California that knows.
Right.
And these things are so important to bring to light. We've got to share this anyway. Katie, one of the other things I want to ask you about, you had mentioned that some of the things you'd gone through, standing up for the kids, for virtually the children of some people who may be against you. And I want you to share a little bit about that and how, what was the strength that really kept you going on this thing?
Well, I did have a really amazing group of support with the staff, and we all put each other in a group chat with teachers all over Shasta County, encouraging each other to stay strong. And, it's really about the kids. And that is what we have always been saying to each other each and every time. It's been about the kids. And, this sense of right and wrong. We're a group of mostly Christian teachers who believe in, just keeping these kids first and doing what's right for the sake of doing what's right and having our integrity intact when it's all over.
Mm-hmm. So much courage. So much courage. And out there, I know that that you've had bouts with COVID. I think you both did, right?
Correct, yeah.
And you came through it. You came through it. You want to talk a little bit about that and share that? Because you went back out on the front lines again after you had COVID. That's amazing. Go ahead, my friend.
So, COVID came into America sometime after January. Could have come before, who knows. But it didn't really come into Shasta County until about April last year, when we were really having an increase in hospitalizations and infection rate. And at that time, when it came out, there was that mask debacle. They said, oh, you don't really need to wear a mask. And in fact, author, don't wear a mask because you're going to scare your patients. You're going to scare their family members. So don't wear a mask. And my only argument was I really just want to wear a mask when I go in and see my patient that has respiratory illness. Yeah. So at that time, we weren't testing everybody that came in that was symptomatic. So if you came in for a stroke and you had a cough, well, that wasn't really COVID, that was a stroke. And if you had a heart attack and you ended up having a cough, well, that wasn't COVID, that was the heart attack. Well, science has changed. Now you test everybody when they come in. So sure enough, I get sick from some coughing patients that they said that didn't have COVID because they didn't match the diagnosis, but were coughing all over me. So I get short of breath, I'm running a fever. Of course, I brought it home to the family. My wife is short of breath. She has a fever. We're checking her oxygen. We're hanging out at 92%, which is low. Most people should be 96 and above for healthy individuals. And I called into work, said I can't come in. I have the symptoms. We went and got checked at our local doctor's office. They came out to the car. They did their best with what they could, but they really just kind of shoved the swab in there and took it out, but didn't do it properly. It came back negative, so we thought we were fine, but why was our oxygen 90%? And so they gave us inhalers, they gave us all this medicine, treated us like we had bronchitis. On about 5 or 6 days into it, my oxygen dropped to 84%. My lips were blue and my face was white. I went to the hospital, they checked me out, they tested me again. They said, oh, there's nothing wrong with you. It came back. They came back negative. I said, well, what's going on? They said, well, I don't know. You might have, it looks like your blood pressure is high. And I said, well, it's high. It's been high ever since I've been sick for the last 6 days, and my heart rate's been 140 to 180 just walking around. Can you tell me what's going on? They said, well, you have a viral illness of something, but we just don't know what it is. I said, okay, well, send me home if you're not going to do anything for me. So, of course, they send me home. I go home and finish taking my course of antibiotics and inhalers and whatnot. And about day 8 to 10, I go and take the trash out. Walk it out to the curb. I come back. My face is white. My lips are blue again. My oxygen's 80%. I go back into the hospital. The ICU doctor says, okay, we're going to test you. We're going to make sure this one's a really good one. Because when they test me, they just kind of shoved it in there and took it out. Well, the test was designed for a little piece of cotton on the end of that Q-tip to go into your nose, brush the cells for at least 10 seconds, pull it out, put it in the reagent. And this time they actually did that very effectively on both nostrils, but infection control at that time said, oh, there's no way that you could be positive. You've already tested negative. So the infection control didn't even send it to be tested, but the ICU doctor wanted it tested. So there was a conflict of care there. So they never sent it. So sure enough, they test me again with, blood test and everything. They say, oh, well, you couldn't find anything wrong with you this time. I said, well, why is my oxygen 80% without having supplemental oxygen? Like, well, we don't know. You have a viral illness of something, but we can't say what it is since we don't have any positive results. But they never sent it, so that didn't get a positive result that time. And we were on oxygen for 5 weeks.
Wow.
We just were at home. I was proning myself on my belly like I would if I was proning my COVID-positive patient, and everything was working. My blood pressure was through the roof. They wouldn't treat it. I asked the doctor, would you at least treat it? Because it's 180, my systolic blood pressure. I mean, I might stroke out. Oh, no, just follow up with your regular doctor in about 4 to 5 weeks. And like 4 to 5 weeks, okay, so I'll just go home and treat myself holistically and lay on my stomach, and hopefully I don't have any problems. My heart rate beating at 140. I really lost faith in the system. But I treated myself just holistically because no one else would give me treatment besides my primary care docs was giving me some advice and, some steroids here and some antibiotics there. So 5 weeks went by. We were able to come off the oxygen. We were testing ourselves. We were walking ourselves around with our oxygen tanks just to make sure that we could get back to normal life. Our neighbors were looking at us a little crazy because it was the height of the pandemic and we're walking around with oxygen bottles down the street. Needless to say, they didn't come out and walk with us. But we got better. We went back to work, and I went back and I worked in every single COVID room because they said, if you recover from COVID, you're immune to it, for at least for 90 days. So I worked COVID ICU, COVID ER, COVID medical, COVID tele, took care of my patients. A lot of people were afraid to go across that line into the room because there was no vaccines back then. And so there was no tool that gave them the ability to cross the line. So I'd go in, I'd cross the line and spend half an hour just talking with the patient and hanging out and holding their hand and being with them because I knew, because science at the time said if you had COVID, it's really unlikely that you're going to get COVID again. So there was only a few health caregivers that would go in and spend real time with those patients. And those patients are isolated, they're alone, they have no visitors.
Wow.
All they have is an iPad. So we're helping them out because we're actually giving them human contact, human interaction, communication, physical touch, all the things that you need when are trying to recover and you're sick. And, so everybody was considered, you've got COVID, you came back, you worked the front line, you were a hero, and you were really spending time with those patients. And then the vaccines came out, and we said, oh, that's a good tool. We don't know anything about the vaccine, but hopefully it's going to work. So we worked the mass vaccination clinics. I gave hundreds and hundreds of vaccines, hoping to get over this pandemic. And then we saw, side effects. But when you give millions of people the same drug, you're going to get side effects. So we saw different things happening. I've had people have vertigo for weeks, flu-like symptoms for weeks. Some people developed some blood clots. We had some local doctors here in town talk about their patients who had passed away after receiving the vaccine. So it's not uncommon to have a vaccine injury if you're going to give millions or billions of people the same vaccine.
Same thing, yeah.
So it's going to happen. But what we saw on the other side is that everybody just wanted to suppress that information. And as healthcare workers and people that learn science and just are able to read and research, we know that when you're suppressing something, a lot of people are going to have, they're just going to start questioning the source of authority. So the public health officer suppresses that information. I'm going to stop believing the public health officer. My doctor suppresses information. I'm going to stop believing my doctor. My government suppresses information. I'm going to stop believing the government. Because you can see that things did happen, but they're trying to suppress it, so that just makes you question everything. So, we have certain tools in our arsenal. You're going to question that tool now. So natural immunity is a tool.
Yes.
Vaccination is a tool. Now we have early treatment that's not controversial. We have steroids. They said if you start taking steroids on day 1 or 2, your likely chances of going to the hospital are really low. You get monoclonal antibodies, which most people qualify if you're older than 12 and positive. For COVID, you usually will qualify for the monoclonal antibodies, and all your symptoms are gone in 2 days. So you have to get that within the first 10 days of treatment. So those two alone, with the tools we already have, could prevent most of these hospitalizations.
Wow.
And most people don't really know that the studies came out, and the percentage of people that get COVID that end up in the hospital is, for someone that's unvaccinated, never had COVID before and recovered, your chances of going to the hospital are 0.08.
Wow.
That's your chances of going to the hospital.
Wow.
And if you've been vaccinated, your chances of going to the hospital are 0.01. So you have a 1% chance of going to the hospital. They don't talk about if you're naturally infected and recovered, what your chances are. But other studies suggested you're better protected than the 0.01%. So you're at least 0.01% of going back to the hospital if you've already recovered. So we have a lot of tools that we can use, like I said, steroids, monoclonal antibodies, and the vaccine to prevent hospitalization and natural infection, of course. But they're not pushing that information out to the general public. And why aren't they doing that? Because if they were just upfront, honest, and with their communication, a lot of this questioning authority would go away because the messaging has been a really bad problem. And then we go back with the mask. Well, how effective are they? Well, cloth masks don't really work at all. We've already done the literature before that happened. Now we have all these other harms that are happening because of the cloth mask. The only thing that really works to prevent illness and respiratory disease is a surgical mask, the paper mask that you throw away after each patient interaction. So if we really wanted to prevent disease, stop transmission, we use the tools we already have in our arsenal, the science that's already worked, the medicine that's already worked, and we go back to work, we open up, and we prevent the harm in the schools, we prevent needing lawsuits and litigation, we prevent liability, and the world can go back to normal.
You would think that there be some sort of legislation about everything you just said. I mean, that's amazing stuff. I would say, I mean, a lot of those things, Arthur, is something that's so preventative. It's so helpful at the very beginning. And you're so right about this being suppressed. That's insane that they would suppress something like this.
It's all done for control.
It's done for control. And that's why people don't trust their government.
That's right.
That's why they don't trust them. And now I know for myself, honestly, I'm afraid to go to the doctor. I'd probably call you because I'm afraid to go to the doctor because I don't know what he's going to want to do to me. No, I'm not going to get the jab. I'm not going to have you shove something up my nose. I've been really sick. I could have had COVID. I go around and I always hug homeless people because they never get COVID. So there's a lot of good prevention you can do there. Get those good germs in there now, Right. The last time I went to the doctor, I was told I had to wear a mask. So I walked in with a mask on, a paper one, and I kind of made it a little bit dirty. And I walked in there and she looked at me and she goes, "Well, I thought you said you didn't have a mask." And I found this one on the ground. I figured it'd be okay. I mean, somebody threw it away. They probably, maybe I'm getting some good germs in there. And then she thought I was serious, but
Right. But you could go and check your antibodies whenever you want. You don't even need a doctor's order. You could go to LabCorp online, order yourself online. You could order yourself up a test.
And what would that test consist of, my friend?
It's a blood test, so you could just order yourself a blood test for the antibodies to COVID, and you go down to LabCorp. I think it's $10, and in a few days you'll get the results back to say if you've ever been in contact with COVID.
It's good to get the one with the titer too, because then you can see what you're at instead of just getting a positive or a negative back.
And what was that again?
It's a titer.
So it's a quantitative antibody test.
Okay.
So it's what we use in healthcare. So when I became a nurse, they wanted to make sure that I was immune to all sorts of diseases that I could come in contact with. So they would draw a titer, and the titer would say, "Oh, you've been exposed to measles, rubella, tuberculosis, or all these different things. You have some kind of natural immunity or vaccination-induced immunity to that." So what they haven't done with COVID, and which could be easily legislative or just put in to the mandate, if they wanted to be above board and get back some of that trust, would to be add in the antibody. So if we all went down and got our blood drawn and we produced an antibody response and they said, "Well, you're positive for antibodies," then you don't need to be under the mandate to get a vaccine. That'd be really simple. People could pay the $10. The government could even pay for it. They're paying for a lot of things right now, so they could pay for it to be done.
Yeah, the government pays for it, but it's our money.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, it's our money.
That's the problem.
It's another tool that they could use and say, okay, well, you've been exposed, so your chances of being hospitalized, because the whole thing has been to reduce hospitalizations. So if we could reduce hospitalizations and we all could go around in our communities once again with the confidence in the science that we have. I had natural immunity, you had vaccination, we have these tools that give us the confidence to return to normal life. We could go back. But for some reason, they don't want this to happen. So then people, like I said, lose trust in the establishment.
Now, again, where would you get that test you were talking about?
So you could go online to LabCorp.
Okay.
They have several in town. They have several over the state, I think in the country too.
Okay.
But you could order, it's $10.
Okay.
And you can then schedule your appointment, go get your blood drawn, and couple days after your blood has been drawn, you can go back onto your online account, print out your result, and say, "Oh, well, it's another tool for you," right?
Right.
So
right.
I've been exposed to COVID. I have an antibiotic response.
And what was that other thing that you taught? The type?
So there's a quantitative test can get. Quantitative. So some tests come back just say, oh, you're positive or negative. So they have a threshold.
And what's it called again? The Tiger?
Well, you want a quantitative antibody test.
Quantitative. Okay.
But if someone were to ask you if you were immune to other things, they would your doctor would say, oh, you're going to go on a medical mission. Well, let's draw your titers.
That's it.
Let's draw your titers, which is just giving you a level of immunity to different diseases. So why don't we just add COVID onto the titer list?
There we go. Okay.
Right? Simple solutions to a complex problem.
Right. All right there.
We were talking about what the parents did in Shasta County, which I think could be duplicated in other counties. I think we have to start looking at maybe a template of some kind of what do you do as a group of teachers and parents, and what do you do in the medical profession to do something to where we start uniting a lot of these counties together. I mean, we hear about a lawsuit here, a lawsuit there, a lawsuit here, a lawsuit there. It would seem to me that there has to be some jurisdiction of law with the sheriff. It would seem to me that would be an avenue, but there's other avenues too. What would you guys suggest as far as how do we create a template to where everybody can use it, similar to all the things you've said, Arthur, that are just amazing, and all the information you have? We have to get some way to where we're working together and united on a united front, especially in California. Really and truly. Any thoughts on that, either one of you?
Yeah, so the October 18th protest, where Shasta County had I think we were the most, but that was statewide. And it was so notable that the superintendent of schools of California sent out a survey to every single county superintendent and asked for their attendance numbers for that day. So we made a really big impact statewide.
Do you know what the impact was for the state?
I think there was somebody I had been messaging who was going to do a Freedom of Information to find that out, because that's, I believe, how we found out Shasta County numbers, which is what I had passed on to them about somebody in our group or somebody in Shasta County had
You
done
mean
that.
these other superintendents aren't just willing to share the information?
Yeah, I don't think even ours was.
Yeah, in the freedom of Information in California, we have the California, it's the CPRA, California Public Records Act, the California Public Records Act. And sometimes, as you know, my friend, you know this from when we went to court with the CFR, that they'll change something on you, and you can ask for, a Public Records Act, but unless you ask for the proper thing, they don't have to give it to you.
Right.
But it's now the California Public Records Act is what we need to do, and we need to get that out there, so we're always asking for something specific.
Right.
Because if you don't ask for this specific thing,
they won't give it to you.
They won't give it to you, and they'll just, you want a FOIA. Well, we don't have FOIAs in California. But we want a FOIA. No, you can't have one. Well, we looked into it. We don't. What do you mean a FOIA? Okay, it's California Public Records Act. So, I think that, again, and I know I've said this a couple of times already, but on podcasts like this, and we will do more of these types of things, because we have to get this out to everyone. The information that you two have given us right here, I am sure 90% of the people in this state don't know. I'm sure of it. And Arthur, the medical venue that you bring has been amazing. What is it you think we can do in the medical field that could be duplicatable as a template? What do you think that we can do all getting together similar to what the teachers did and what the parents did?
To fix the mandates, I mean, it's pretty simple, really. I mean, it's a really simple solution to start testing symptomatic people, which we did in the beginning. So we should all be fighting to just test people when they're sick or when they present with symptoms. They could easily be non-evasive and move to the spit test. Then that would eliminate all the controversy about ethylene oxide. So everybody can do a spit test. So that's one, two-step solution right there. The mask mandate just needs to go, especially in schools, because we see the harm happening.
Yeah.
Of course, if you saw increase in cases, increase in infection rate, kids going to the hospital, then you could always put the mask back on. But if that didn't happen, then there's no harm. So why aren't we just proceeding with that, since we don't have any studies that have been done in children in schools? So there's your math.
Well, if only we had a well-funded research company,
Right. Right.
in our government.
But the thing, it would be a working.
do.
It would be a working study, because we already have seen what the mask can do in a school. If we take them away and move forward, if there's no harm done and infection rates are the same or go down, that means that the masks were not working at all, or making it worse. Either one.
Right.
You're just saying, but if it's a beneficial experience, then we're good with the mask. So that solves the mask problem. For the early treatment problem, we already have 2 therapeutics. Why aren't we using that emergency defense authorization bill to streamline the monoclonal antibodies? We know that if I give you monoclonal antibodies when you test positive and you get those, within 2 days, your symptoms are either decreased or gone. I could prevent hospitalizations from happening. We give that to vaccinated and unvaccinated people. So why aren't we pumping that medication out? Why are we restricting it and rationing it?
That's been sort of the keynote, hasn't it? Why? And it really has to do with control. And it really has to do with, we have a totalitarian, corrupt government in California. I mean, there's no question about that. The mandates aren't legal because they're not legislative. The only people that can make law is the legislative body, yet everything is coming down from the governor. And we all know that the definition of any kind of emergency act, state of emergency, is when the county resources are overwhelmed by the threat. That's the definition. That's never happened. These common sense, educated suggestions you have out there are incredibly good. I think we need to do maybe somehow some doctors should help you with this, but we need to have something documented and something that's fairly simple. Everything you guys explained today was understandable, articulate, and, educated a lot of people. If, in fact, we continue on this path with these kids, we know that it's detrimental to their health, their future, their learning ability. If we keep this path up medically, we know it's detrimental to health. We know it's detrimental to your psychological situation. I mean, what about all the psychological situations this has put people into? Missing work, losing their jobs. What does this do psychologically to the folks?
Well, that's kind of one of the reasons that really made me want to fight and get the teachers on board, was I saw what happened to the nurses when they were being drug in there and being tested and, being less than for being unvaccinated, when, they were holding up signs saying last year's heroes, this year's unemployed. And, I just went, we can't let this happen to people. And it is the mechanism that wore them down. And it was, it just sort of made them feel like walk around with their shoulders slumped down and just feeling, just not, it's like there's not that satisfaction of walking in and being like, hey, I'm this like super amazing, knock it out of the park nurse, and I'm good at my job, of one of the best employees here, and everyone appreciates me, to all of a sudden to, twice a week I have to go in and do this test, and it's because they're saying I'm a threat to my, my patients, and, it's just this, it just wears on them over time, and a lot of people left the state, a lot of people went and found a different employer, a lot of people just left the profession all in and of itself, especially the ones that weren't nurses, just worked, in the hospital and couldn't find another job that didn't treat them like that. So, I thought, us teachers can't do that. We can't be in that. And then it would go to our students next. And that was where our line was.
Well, you mentioned a moment ago about having an agency that was well-funded. We have that here in Shasta County.
Yeah, that was a joke.
Well, it's a serious matter because our budget for our county, half of the budget goes to the health department here in our county. So, of the $600 million that the entire budget is, approximately $300 million goes to the Health and Human Services Department. We have it. We already have it. We just need to do redirection on that department chair to make sure things work, and they do exactly what you're talking about, getting the testing capabilities for everybody that wants it here in our county. How many could there possibly be? We have 180,000 people in our county. Of those 180,000, how many would really want to find out on that? Is it going to be cost prohibitive to do it? I doubt it. I seriously doubt it. So let's just start out and see what happens. Just start doing it. So many allowed a month or whatever we can buy, we can just get those test kits, get them out there, and then people can see where they're up against. And then removing the mask, absolutely, that has to be done. The kids need to be able to breathe. They need to be able to see. They need to be able to read your face, facial expressions, your lips, your mouth, like you're talking about with all the speech effectives. All those things has to happen, because if we don't take care of it now, we most certainly will be paying for it later. Because down the road, some of these children are going to be totally affected when you're talking about the psyche part of it.
Right.
Absolutely, they're going to be affected. And not knowing what's going on, if they're forced to wear them at home as well, God forbid that should happen, but if they're forced to wear them at home, they're wearing them 24/7. They're not getting what they need at home, let alone at school. And a lot of these littles, the only safe place they have is school,
Right.
which is very
That's true.
unfortunate. And that's huge. And my wife has been a teacher for over 30 years. I've heard stories, and it just makes me so angry. God bless you, I could not be a teacher.
Yeah.
I could not be a teacher because I know myself way too well that, I would probably be in trouble for some of the things that I would try to do as a corrective action, to the adults.
Right.
To the adults.
To the board.
To the adults.
Right.
So
To the board.
I would be remiss if I didn't at least plug our website. It is
absolutely, yes.
schoolwalkout.org. Check us out on there. If you're in Shasta County, our Facebook page is Shasta County Protests the Mandates, schoolwalkout.org. And then also the 29th, our superintendents are getting together.
The November 29th?
I'm sorry. Yeah, November 29th.
Yes,
Thank you for correcting me.
Sure.
Are getting together to talk about parents coming into these board meetings and speaking. And
Is this a public meeting?
no, so
Behind
it's a
closed doors?
behind closed doors
Wow.
meeting with one superintendent and one board member from every single school in Shasta County. We feel like this is the one opportunity they're all going to be together. So we are going to do our shoe protest. We bring our shoes, signifying the kids and parents and students who will be walking if these vaccine mandates do go through. We are also asking for personal letters for Tim Garman, who's running for Supervisor District 2, by the way. We need to get him in there.
Yes.
But anyway, so he's going to bring those letters and be our voice inside that room and advocate for the parents' choice for their students and the choice of the staff as well.
What time does this start, Katie?
So it's at 4:30 to 5. And I also, if you can't bring the shoes on that day, we have some early drop-off locations at Dill's Deli or Jones Fort. So please utilize those. We will be picking them up and laying them out there for you.
Kid shoes.
Yes, we have to make this big. We're going to do staff shoes and student shoes as well. So, and those personal letters, not a form letter. You write your own letter of
Right.
why what you're going to do with your student if these vaccine mandates
Now,
go through.
Tim is going to be there because he's a board president
Yes, so
of the
he's
school board.
Yes,
And so you're able to access him through that process.
yeah. So he's
Okay.
going to. I've asked him to be our voice and to present those letters for us.
Okay, wonderful.
Well, you two, we only have about a minute left. I want to thank you. I mean, you two are just the epitome of what we need here in folks that are going to stand up with a heart and people that want to make a change for good. Folks, again, please share this program. We need to do something big here in Shasta County to have yourself, both of you speak, people like Lonnie and Karina Van Gay, people like Krista and Martin Reed to speak. Maybe we can get Bethel to give us the convention center. Yeah, I know I'm saying this on the air, but, I'm just saying, really and truly, this is something that affects everybody. It affects everybody, but most importantly, it affects our babies.
Yep.
That's right.
So I want to thank you too. You're amazing. Love having you on. And we'll do this again, yes?
Yes.
All right.
Let's do it.
Well, thank you
Well,
welcome. Thank
time
you.
has come, my friend.
for 51.
Let's get it done.
Amen.
Hey, CA, come out and play. Have you seen the bill we all have to pay? It's not our bill, we had no say. You don't serve us, you serve LA. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind. You don't know us, you have no clue, and still you're telling us what to do. We don't know you or what you face. It's time to start a brand new state. The time has come for 51 in a Jefferson state of mind.